It started with laughter so loud that it silenced an entire crowd. Hundreds of spectators turned toward an old, faded dragster sitting beneath the blazing afternoon sun, its chipped paint revealing years of neglect. A wealthy CEO smirked as he pointed toward the forgotten machine and loudly declared that if the struggling single dad standing beside it could actually make that $500 wreck roar back to life, he could keep it forever. The crowd burst into laughter because everyone knew the engine had been dead for years. But what nobody knew was that the quiet father staring at that battered dragster wasn't seeing rust and broken parts. He was seeing the last promise he had made to his little daughter. Within moments, the impossible would happen, changing every life on that raceway forever. Before we continue this unforgettable journey, if you believe kindness is stronger than pride, forgiveness is more powerful than revenge, and everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a thoughtful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel. Every act of support helps our family and our community grow, allowing my channel to continue sharing stories that remind us what truly matters. The annual Riverside Heritage Motors Festival had always attracted collectors, racers, mechanics, and dreamers from across the country. It was less about speed than stories, where forgotten vehicles often carried memories more valuable than the trophies displayed beneath bright banners fluttering in the warm afternoon breeze. This year's event was sponsored by industrial billionaire and automotive company CEO Preston Hawthorne, a man admired for his business brilliance but equally known for his sharp tongue and absolute confidence that money solved everything. Every display gleamed under perfect daylight except one neglected corner where an old dragster rested behind a faded rope barrier with a handwritten sign describing it as a failed restoration project that nobody wanted. Walking slowly toward that forgotten exhibit was a worn-out single father named Everett Calloway. His work boots carried stains from years repairing farm equipment, lawn tractors, and aging pickup trucks in a tiny roadside garage that barely earned enough to pay rent. Ever since losing his wife to a sudden illness 5 years earlier, every decision Everett made revolved around his 10-year-old daughter, Clara. She had inherited her mother's gentle smile and her father's endless curiosity. While other children watched cartoons, Clara loved listening to stories about engines, races, and machines that ordinary people transformed into extraordinary dreams. She believed every broken thing deserved someone who refused to give up on it. Everett had once dreamed of becoming a professional race mechanic before life demanded different sacrifices. Medical bills, funeral expenses, and raising Clara alone had quietly buried those ambitions beneath responsibility. Still, every afternoon after school, Clara sat beside him in the garage handing him wrenches while asking endless questions about pistons, carburetors, and horsepower. Their greatest shared dream was restoring a dragster together one day, even if it never raced professionally. To Clara, building something with her father mattered far more than winning. When Everett spotted the abandoned dragster, he stopped walking. Despite the peeling paint and cracked body panels, he immediately recognized the craftsmanship hidden beneath decades of neglect. The chassis remained straight. The frame showed signs of careful welding from another era. Someone had once poured enormous love into that machine before circumstances stole its future. Everett gently rested his hand on the dusty fender as though greeting an old friend. Preston Hawthorne noticed the lingering glance and wandered over with several executives following behind him. Cameras from local media naturally drifted toward the interaction. Preston enjoyed public moments that reinforced his reputation as someone impossible to impress. He casually explained that the dragster had been purchased during an estate auction simply because nobody else wanted it. Experts had declared the engine permanently seized. Countless mechanics had failed to revive it. It had become little more than decorative scrap. When Everett quietly mentioned that he believed the engine still had life left inside, another wave of laughter rolled through nearby spectators. Preston found the confidence amusing. He announced loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear that if the struggling mechanic could start that $500 dragster before the festival ended, the car belonged to him. If not, Everett would simply walk away embarrassed like everyone else who believed impossible things. Few realized Everett never accepted the challenge to prove anyone wrong. He accepted because Clara's eyes sparkled with hope. The organizers rolled the dragster into an open demonstration area under bright afternoon sunlight. Spectators gathered shoulder to shoulder, expecting comedy instead of history. Everett removed his weathered jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and began inspecting the engine without rushing. Years of hardship had taught him that panic only created mistakes. Instead of replacing expensive components, he listened. He touched every hose, bolt, and cable with patient fingertips. He smelled the stale fuel. He traced the ignition wiring. He noticed tiny clues everyone else had overlooked because they had searched for dramatic failures instead of simple truths. The carburetor wasn't beyond repair. A fuel line had collapsed internally. The ignition timing had been altered incorrectly years earlier. Rust covered important connections, but the heart of the engine remained surprisingly healthy. Clara watched proudly from behind the safety barrier, holding the old toolbox that had belonged to her grandfather. Every time Everett needed another wrench, she was already waiting with it. Their quiet teamwork contrasted sharply with the expensive equipment surrounding Preston's corporate display. Hours passed beneath the warm afternoon sun. The crowd gradually shifted from mocking amusement to silent curiosity. Even veteran mechanics began whispering that the single father seemed to understand the forgotten machine better than anyone before him. Preston's confidence slowly weakened, though he refused to show it. Finally Everett tightened one final connection, carefully primed the fuel system, adjusted the throttle linkage, and rested both hands on the steering wheel. The entire festival seemed to stop breathing. The first attempt produced only a tired cough, the second shook dust loose from the exhaust, the third unleashed a thunderous explosion of sound that echoed across the fairgrounds. The dragster erupted to life with a deep, unmistakable roar that vibrated through every spectator's chest. Birds lifted into the bright afternoon sky, children covered their ears. Old mechanics smiled with tears filling their eyes. Clara screamed with joy before running into her father's arms as the engine settled into a powerful, steady rhythm that nobody believed possible. For several seconds, Preston Hawthorne stood completely motionless. His laughter had disappeared. The forgotten dragster wasn't merely running. It sounded magnificent. Applause spread slowly at first before becoming a deafening standing ovation. Complete strangers embraced each other. Some wiped away tears without understanding exactly why. Perhaps they weren't celebrating a machine. They were celebrating perseverance finally receiving the respect it deserved. True to his public promise, Preston handed Everett the ownership papers. Cameras captured the moment, expecting celebration. Instead, Everett thanked him sincerely without arrogance or revenge. There was no victory speech, no attempt to embarrass the billionaire who had mocked him. Only gratitude. That unexpected humility unsettled Preston far more than public defeat ever could. Later that afternoon, while the festival continued, Preston quietly visited Everett's small workspace where Clara carefully polished the dragster's faded body. Without cameras or executives nearby, he noticed photographs taped inside the toolbox. One showed Clara helping rebuild an old lawn mower. Another showed Everett sleeping in a chair beside her hospital bed years earlier after she broke her arm. A third displayed the entire family before tragedy had reshaped their lives. For the first time in years, Preston found himself wondering whether success measured in profits had slowly cost him something money could never replace. He asked festival volunteers about Everett and learned astonishing details. The single father quietly repaired elderly neighbors' vehicles for almost nothing when they couldn't afford repairs. He mentored teenagers who wanted to become mechanics. He often refused payment from struggling families, accepting homemade pies or vegetables instead because preserving someone's dignity mattered more than earning another dollar. Meanwhile, Preston's own employees described him as brilliant but emotionally distant. They respected him but rarely felt seen. That realization weighed heavily on him. The story of the revived dragster spread rapidly across news outlets before sunset. Reporters celebrated the miraculous restoration, but the real headline became the character of the man who never sought revenge against the person who humiliated him. Several days later, during another bright afternoon, Preston personally visited Everett's modest garage without television cameras. He expected resentment. Instead he found Clara laughing while painting old tool cabinets bright blue. Everett greeted him with simple kindness. Preston admitted something he had never confessed publicly. His own father had been a gifted mechanic who spent countless afternoons restoring engines with him as a child. After becoming wealthy, Preston gradually abandoned those memories while chasing larger companies, bigger deals, and greater recognition. Somewhere along the journey he had begun measuring people by appearances instead of character. Watching Everett and Clara revive an abandoned dragster had reminded him of the boy he once was. He apologized sincerely for laughing. Everett accepted immediately. Forgiveness arrived so naturally that Preston almost struggled to believe he deserved it. Their conversation lasted hours beneath the warm daylight pouring through the garage doors. By the time Preston left, both men understood something extraordinary had begun. Weeks later, Preston announced a nationwide apprenticeship program funded by his company. Instead of focusing only on university graduates, the initiative welcomed hardworking mechanics, technicians, and single parents rebuilding their lives through skilled trades. Everett became the program's lead mentor, not because of the dragster itself, but because Preston believed character taught lessons no textbook ever could. The old $500 dragster became the symbol of the program. It was never repainted to perfection. The scratches remained. The faded panels stayed visible. Every mark reminded visitors that beauty often hides beneath damage others dismiss. Clara grew into the unofficial ambassador of the workshop, greeting new apprentices with the same optimism that had helped her father believe impossible things remained possible. People traveled from distant towns simply to hear the story. Some arrived carrying broken engines, others carried broken confidence, many left with repaired hearts. Years later, visitors still asked why the dragster remained exactly as it had looked the afternoon it came back to life. Everett always smiled gently because restoring its appearance would erase the evidence that hope could survive neglect. One bright afternoon, a young boy whose family had lost nearly everything quietly approached the display and admitted he wanted to become a mechanic but feared he wasn't smart enough. Everett placed the same old wrench into the child's hands that Clara had once carried for him and explained that machines rarely cared where someone came from. They responded only to patience, honesty, and determination. The lesson had nothing to do with engines and everything to do with life. As the applause from another successful apprenticeship graduation echoed across the open workshop, Preston stood beside Everett watching dozens of families celebrating together. He realized the greatest investment he had ever made wasn't another company acquisition. It had been believing in one quiet father who refused to give up on a forgotten machine because he had already promised his daughter that broken things deserved another chance. Before this story comes to its close, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment telling us what touched your heart the most, or share a moment when someone believed in you even after others had given up. Your words may become the encouragement another member of our community needs today. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Remember that life often places extraordinary futures inside ordinary people, and sometimes the loudest laughter is only moments away from becoming the loudest applause. The greatest victories rarely begin with perfect circumstances. They begin with someone choosing hope when everyone else chooses doubt, choosing compassion when pride seems easier, and choosing forgiveness even after being humiliated. That old $500 dragster became far more than a machine. It became living proof that hearts, dreams, families, and even forgotten lives can roar back to life when just one person refuses to stop believing.